It's 6:01 to the Public Works Properties and Sustainability Committee meeting on July 12th. And the login information for our hybrid meeting is at the top of the agenda. And we'll call our meeting to order. We do have a quorum and the agenda was properly posted. And is visual roll call okay? Yes. All right, super, thank you. Then we can move on to item 3, public appearances, public's opportunity to speak about any subject that is not a specific agenda item. Do we have any comments that are not on the agenda? I don't see anyone extra that has joined us, so we'll move on to item 4, old business, discuss and consider direction on bus road build out. So I toss that down to you.
I can stall while Josh gets the computer.
All right,
done.
sounds good.
Well, this is really, the last time we talked about bus road was with Shady Grove extensively, a little bit with the school for anybody who's involved in that discussion. It's come up again now that there's a potential development, looking like it's going to be a development, the Heyday Group at the Blair property at the corner there. And so, that said, we're going to want to work with Dane County along the frontage there and make sure that we can align what we want to see on BB with what the county can require. But along bus, we want to take the opportunity of a developer coming in. It's different than the school district where we have kind of an agreement because we know they're not going anywhere. We'll get what we want to see in the future, and they agreed to that with a bunch of different stipulations. But so, broadly speaking, I guess, basically I just asked Josh if we'll really ever foresee the need for 4 lanes, even, you know, decades ahead. It's running from Gaston to Vilas. What are the odds that we're going to have average daily traffic that really requires, you know, 4-lane, that the way that, I think the last time we brought in the typical section was Mike Maloney, probably 4 years ago now, maybe. So we want to take a look and then bring it to this committee for their thoughts. I guess, generally speaking, we're still thinking boulevarded. It's going to be a main arterial someday, even with what we know is happening right now. Hamburg's going to finish out up to the north of the school. The school district will finish their section, and Heyday comes in. And then we've got Shady Grove. So, and basically we've got the right of way to do a boulevarded section, but are we ever, or do we foresee needing the 4 lanes right now, or are we looking at something more like grab the curb a median, make it nice, give left turn lanes, or at least whether they're required now or not, but in the future you've got a median, you can add left turn lanes. And potentially we've just got 1 lane each way, but a nice boulevarded section where you can have a nice buffered bike lane. You still will have the bike path running along the side for all of these. And basically I asked Josh today, was that today? They've all kind of blended together, but you know, what amount of cars are we looking at before we're really going to need, you know, even in today's traffic engineering world, and was it 16,000+ you really need to see?
Yeah, I would say it's around like, you know, 14,000 to 16,000 depending on access, you know, along that route, which you're going to control access, right?
Yep.
You control it at the school, you'll control it on other developments.
Everything Hamburg does,
if you had a bunch of commercial sites that had a bunch of direct access to the road, it would be different, but yeah, I don't see that as being an issue to work up into the 14,000, 16,000. We talked about the boulevard section. It could be, you could still maintain a boulevard, but you could keep 1 lane in each direction with a bike lane and buffered bike lane there, really, and have a median that could be used for left turn lanes, and you'll easily get 6,000+ vehicles along that route a day, which is a lot of vehicles. Probably more than we'll see for a long, long time. So does it make sense to build out this large 4-lane corridor when the traffic really wouldn't be there? JJ goes back to, like, you know, what do we want to require of developers? We're at the point where Heyday now is coming in and saying, hey, we want to do some development along here. But how do we urbanize that section of roadway that's adjacent to their site along Bus Road?
What do we have for traffic today?
Nothing. I mean,
it's got to be very low.
But especially with school out, it's all school traffic there, basically.
Well, you're talking that level
Just-
on Bus Road.
Yeah, yep, yep.
Yeah, this is.
Well, in BB, I think we're gonna have a similar conversation with the county or Thursday, at some point this week. We've got a meeting with them to talk about that. But I know from things I've heard and seen from Dane County, they don't seem to be looking to expand. It was, Madison did in from Sprecher Road into the west, but DOT didn't on the bridge, and as far as I know, still has no plans to. So I mean, I'm thinking maybe that was kind of a Madison-specific thing, that they're still doing kind of the old school, just build it out while you're building. Where Dane County, you know, they're just gonna repave BB basically as is later this year. So I'm not foreseeing them forecasting the traffic for a long time either.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Because they haven't even, I mean, we haven't heard any rumblings on N either.
No, we're
Maybe
gonna be
long term
on
towards Sun Prairie, but,
Thursday.
yeah.
Thursday.
So,
Is there any worry that if you build it out, people on the west side of Cottage would take bus road over to Gaston to get to 94 quicker to avoid the 25 through the town? Like if you build it, they will come?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that if we went with like the typical section we showed years ago, I think definitely would, because then it's gonna feel, then even if there's somebody going 25 or through the school zone in the right lane, you could shoot out around them in the, absolutely, because I know I cut that way if I'm coming from my house and I'm not stopping in the village, I'm going to 94. I drive the speed limit, of course, because I'm near Kristen.
I don't know if that would impact the traffic count, if you impact that or not.
I think we will see, I think a lot of the traffic count there now is through to avoid the village. But I think, yeah, if we want to make sure that that stays as safe as possible for the future, then you keep it narrower where somebody's going to, they're less likely to be able to fly through speeding. If they just, you know, if there's somebody like me going 25, they can't get around me, at least.
How much further west will this expand their access to this? Become more house, more housing development that way? Or are we going to do?
Well, let's see, that's nice. The city of Madison and the town already have their agreement in place. So we can't, actually west, we can't go too much further, just a couple more 40s to the west, and then basically, then Madison will meet us.
Well,
Yep. Oh,
you know, it helps to come maybe a little earlier.
But really, primarily right now, we're just talking about Bus Road and not so much along BB there. And I think Josh was just going to bring up the typical section, but it was only just, it was going to show what we've talked about, really, instead of where you saw 4 lanes, and then the multi-use path, and then the sidewalk, basically be 1 lane, buffered bike lanes, a little tighter on the curbs, a little wider on the median.
What do you say what we want in Shady Grove?
It, sort of. That's where if we'd have had this conversation 4 years ago, we'd probably have the median, Shady Grove would probably be putting the curb in on the median versus the kind of compromise we came to with them when they came back in, with leaving that. Other than that, yeah, it'd look a lot like what it does, only they'd be pouring that curb in Shady Grove right now. And then maybe that's a project we look to put in our planning in future years to match that up when and if the north side goes. It's just too bad we couldn't have gotten Shady to do it if we'd had this conversation back in 2018 or whenever they first came around, or even the compromise discussion.
So on the east side of Shady Grove, sorry, but I want to make sure you can hear on the phone. So is it 8-foot wide bike path on the east side of Bus there?
On the east side of Bus on Shady Grove? Yes, that was another of the compromise pieces, I believe, yes. When the new owners came in, they wanted to cut some costs, and we,
Because it was going to be 10 or something?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So then that would continue then to meet the school's
yep,
multi-use path? And then the Homburg will continue out
yep.
in West Lawn?
Yeah. So, yeah, well, I mean, the potential for a buffered bike lane is more for somebody that's, you know, the experienced road bikers that come, we get a lot through the village too, that don't want to be on a path where they might run into a family with strollers or whatever. But that will still be all the way through Shady, up north through the school, and then, yeah. I mean, I guess Hamburg hasn't come in for those approvals yet, but I envision this committee and the plan and board saying we want to see it continue.
Yeah, they kind of know,
They know
they've
that,
talked about
yeah.
it a little bit through there about
Yep.
making sure that the path would continue on to the north.
Yep.
So what I was trying to do, just was wishing it would be a lot more efficient, was just to show you, you know, what Shady Grove did, just to give you a refresher. So there's a 100-foot right of way on Shady Grove now, you know, from right of way to right of way. And what they did is they did build this large, I would say, open boulevard section. Like they put a curb on the outside, one lane of travel, and then a large grass median, one lane of travel on the other side of the curb. So eventually this would be built as a section for a 4-lane. They left the space there for that, with the medians kind of neck down so that additional lane could kind of be added in the median that already done in the crosswalks. You know, when we looked at that a little bit, and I talked to JJ more, like we discussed, 11-foot lane out there today, tack on the other 11-foot lane. I just drew on this, and then another curve that leaves you with like an 11-foot median. Not quite enough room actually for a median if you wanted left turn bays, which is kind of interesting a little bit. That they didn't probably expect. They expected there to be probably enough capacity here that they really wouldn't need left turn bays. You know, they would just turn left from the left lane, turn right from the right lane. Just because they weren't going to have that much volume in the 4-lane corridor. So I told JJ, you know, there might be one way to enhance this a little bit, is we could build it where you have a 5-foot bike lane. So I kind of show a 5-foot bike lane here, a 2-foot buffer, so a buffered bike lane where you kind of double stripe it to get a little more space, and a 12-foot lane with a curb and still have a 16-foot median. So you only have one lane in each direction. But this 16-foot median provides left turn bays. So if you want, you move this curve out for a left turn, and you have a 10-foot left turn bay with still a 6-foot median here for safe pedestrian travel and storage. Either way, kind of does the same thing as before. It still gives you, 16,000 vehicles a day on that roadway versus maybe 20,000 you give before. Well, that is, I mean, 20,000 is a lot of vehicles. You know, you're not experiencing even close to that anywhere else in the village today, even on BD10. You know, it is a tremendous amount of vehicles. I agree, though. Mike Cackle pointed out to me too the other day that he thought that with the Gaston connection and then the connection, you know, across the interstate potentially and cutting over to Easttown, that you know that route may become a corridor that is used more, but it still would have to take a substantial amount of traffic. And if you do a section like this, you may maybe even put a 3-foot buffer in there, right, instead of 5. So you have 5, 3, and 12, which would give you 8 and 12, which would give you 20 feet. So if you ever wanted to someday come back and say, okay, this is now going to be a 4-lane corridor. We have 20 feet. You could make it 2 10-foot lanes, a little narrower to slow speeds down. You could get rid of the bikes because maybe at 16+ thousand vehicles a day, people don't feel that comfortable regardless on the road, even if there's a bike lane for them. And you already have a multi-use path that can be substituted in, already built. So you could set yourself up for, potentially just removing markings in the future, but maybe just taking it as more of a 1 lane in each direction with that still nice boulevard feel with left turn bays as needed as part of that to carve out. So we wanted to, as we were looking at this, we wanted to just, I went up to the school entrance here. I just laid that out. They have 100 feet here that was carved out. They additional got 30 feet of right-of-way out here to make that happen. And you'd have the 24 feet, so you'd have kind of curb to curb, and then center 16 here. And it just shows you that the way the road was built on the east side up here, so the school's down here we're looking south to north. The school entrance is right here to what would be the east. They did build, when they set this up, the west side to be about where that curve would be. But they do have a lot to tack on the school side, which the school knew that they weren't going to build this full section at the time. But we were just trying to get a feel for, do we build this ultimate corridor, and what do we do to the south as Hayday's proposal comes in from here to Cottage Grove Road? And then also they built this multi-use path right out to the right of way, which was good because it still provided room for a future right turn right here. Do we continue that path south, which makes sense because it connects them across the road, and potentially then to the east along Cottage Road. So we just wanted to kind of give you our thoughts as part of this and make sure we were still on the right track with this kind of larger corridor section. Didn't necessarily have to be 4 lanes in the near future, but could maybe be expanded to 4 lanes if you really needed that. Maybe it's more of a bike boulevard, and maybe it's more of like bike buffered lanes with just 1 lane in each direction and a boulevard, until you really get the traffic, which could come, but maybe 20 plus years down the road, or more, depending on how all of the west side develops. If that's kind of what you wanted to discuss as part of
Yep.
that, right?
I mean, yeah, we just want to be able to answer Heyday and do it right, you know, for this whole corridor for at least until I'm dead and gone.
Which is hopefully a long time.
Yes. Yeah, shoot, if I survive this month.
Any
Other-
questions or thoughts in regards to some of that, or?
No, I think it makes sense, we kind of lay it out here. I was thinking we were thinking kind of road, if you're talking bus road, 50,000, that's a long time.
Yeah, I mean,
Doesn't mean we don't want to plan for it, maybe it'll happen, but,
right.
I don't know.
And you do have, you know, that will just, from the school, and I guess to the south, you will have your 100 feet. But then as Hamburg and everybody develops to the north, we'll continue to just carve out that right away to have it, right?
Right.
Have that 100 feet as part of the expansion. As far as Hayday's concerned, you know, we're gonna meet with the county to talk about maybe what they have to do for improvements along Cottage Grove Road, because that's still in the county jurisdiction as part of the county road. As far as what we want them to do along Bus Road, you know, JJ and I were talking, do we really want them to start to install a curb this far out and a multi-use path, and with, you know, and then kind of rework the school entrance at this point? Or do we want to kind of leave what's out there today, because it is all reconstructed, all the way to that intersection, knowing that someday, both maybe in Hayday's developers agreement, that if this ever urbanizes, what I mean by urbanize is changing from that little shoulder section and ditch to a curb section, they have some compensation that they have to pay for curb along or something. You know, the widening might be part of a large arterial plan for traffic, but they still need to urbanize their side. We can have them install the multi-use path out here, because we know where that would go. But they wouldn't have the cost to put in the storm sewer or the curbing today. But it may be a future cost that will be assessed to them later. You know, it's, in my mind, maybe that's the best route to go, because they have improved that section just a couple of years back.
That, are we talking school or Heyday?
I'm talking Heyday. 'Cause
Okay.
right now, the school, I don't know what you can do to go back to the school, or what's in place, JJ.
Back to the school is easier.
Okay.
Basically, because they knew 5 years out that they'd have to build, and they thought fully urbanized, 4 lanes, you know. Heyday, I know we've talked briefly about how we want to do these things with a developer, but if it gets challenging, you know, with some kind of an escrow, when they may, you know, want to bang out their development and move on,
Right.
that would be
They
something a
may be
little
able to
more.
put this path in, kind of showing it out on there now. They can maybe put this path in where it's gonna go, but do we want them to do any more improvements out into this future potential section? Or do we want them to kind of match what the school did? And then in their developer agreement, JJ, maybe get them to agree to,
Yep.
we understand if you urbanize this someday, we're gonna be assessed for the curb and some of the stormwater work to urbanize the section that we would have probably had to do right now today, but the corridor's not ready for that. That's my only thought, if maybe we make it the cleanest right now.
Yep, which I think from this committee, maybe we're really just looking for, broadly is the overall idea of no longer looking necessarily for that 4-lane
Yep.
when it's not required. Because then, yeah, there's a lot of details to hammer
They'll have
out
to
with
do it, yeah,
how it
on
would
the
work.
Planning commission and
Yep.
everywhere else as part of their development.
Yeah, but I mean, broadly, yeah, we want to make sure we know how to answer the question of what do you need to see here from us from Heyday.
So all of that curb and gutter is shown here based off of before planning
Yes,
is going.
yes. So the black stuff is everything that was just part of the bus plan, as the bus road plan when the school built and this was redeveloped out here. So this is, the black stuff is what was put in. There's,
It is called, I mean, to the school district and in all of our, everything we saw here, the temporary bus road. I mean, that is literally what it was called because the school didn't budget for the required. So, I mean,
right.
the expectation there was that that was temporary. So, I mean, if we wanted to say, Heyday put it in, we're going to match it up now. I
Now
mean,
to
it's,
do with the school and-
a year, 2 or 3 it's the definition of temporary and not ideally how we would have done it, but
Right.
that's the struggle we had with that particular project.
So you're right, the outside red lines and the inside red lines would be kind of that median. I mean, obviously there'd be some turn bays and stuff at this location, I'm just showing kind of a width overall. But they would have to install out to these points with urbanization. Curb, okay. Just like Shady Grove is doing down on their section, to some degree. They're doing the outer limits, allowing them to build in later at a later date, when the capacity is needed.
Yeah, I like that because you set the exterior perimeter, or the exterior limits, so that if you buy one of those lots, you know if there's a sidewalk here, there's a curb
Yeah,
there.
there's
And on the inside, it doesn't matter too much. So I kind of like that idea as well, with the Heyday development. Is that, we have a misunderstanding here. So all of that curb and gutter is put in by the school at some future
The-
timeframe?
The red lines there? Yep.
They've agreed to.
They've agreed to
fully
pay for that.
urbanizing
Yep.
this section, how the village,
How we asked for, or tried to require it when they first came in with Granite Ridge plans, was we said, this is what we need to see, and they hadn't planned for that, so we compromised with this temporary solution that they installed, and that's the black lines there is what's actually out there.
so like.
So Josh is just showing what we're
I'll zoom
kind of
in.
proposing.
The curb and all the asphalt that they put out there, all the way to the other side, this is a shoulder on the other side. There's like a paved shoulder and a little bit of a gravel shoulder, that's this dash line. So they have installed a decent amount of pavement up here, but it's still all in that rural section where it's just shoulder, gravel, ditch. It wasn't urbanized like you see in Shady Grove where they're urbanizing it. They did put a path along the section of their stuff, but they never put curb out there, they didn't put in the storm sewer system. Something that we would require of Heyday and Hamburg to the north, and even the school as they came to put this in. And you just hadn't budgeted for
Yep.
these improvements.
Yep. Which, yeah, this was our compromise to them to allow
So we'll
that.
be able to save some of that pavement.
Yeah, that's
But
what, it's
we
not,
will, we will be carving out a grass median where there is asphalt today, right? But some of the limits will have to extend and build upon out there and then resurface the entire thing.
I mean, my preference would be just to do it one time, but I don't know if that's a possibility. It would seem to be the one.
Yep.
But with the development itself, something how we capture that, I don't know how it works exactly.
I don't know that we've got a good answer if it's capturing for a
That might be-
future.
That might be more developer agreement.
Yep.
Plan commission driven.
Mhm.
I guess what you wanted to get out of this, JJ, is to make sure that everybody's still, the plan, or the public works was good with the plan to have this a wider boulevard corridor.
Yep,
Potential for 4 lanes someday, probably build it more with like a 2-lane facility,
yep.
like we're doing in Shady Grove.
Mhm.
You could consider a bike boulevard if you really wanted to, because this could be a long-term 2-lane facility for
Yep.
20-plus years, easily. And then go from there as expanding it at a later date.
Yep.
That I like. Yeah, if you want to thought on that, that's
Mhm.
fine. But I agree with that.
Yep. The timing of it might be tricky, that, we will have to talk about that, just because the school may just be stuck doing it when either Heyday does it, or if not Heyday, when Hamburg comes with that next one, which, may not be long before they're coming in, because we're gonna have them do it when they get there, so I mean, They knew it was temporary, and in theory, when we first started those discussions, it was 5 years at the most, so, I mean, it's most likely gonna be, at the earliest, it still would have lasted probably 2-3 years,
Yeah.
so, I mean, that
Is
was,
it worth just engaging with the school before, giving Heyday
This
kind
was-
of a final thing?
my two cents would be, we get all our ducks in a row, what we wanna see, because it's our right of way, and knowing that those talks were challenging, because we couldn't, school staff was fine to work with, they were getting different political guidance, I think. And it's our right of way, and they agreed to make it how we want to see it. So I guess that would be my thought, would absolutely reach out, let them know, here's what we're telling this development here, here's what you agreed to a few years back in this, here's the contract language, and here's the timing we're probably thinking is probable, and, and Josh will estimate how much it's gonna cost you.
Right,
And,
yeah.
I would prefer to have it all done the right way now that Heyday's coming in.
Yep,
I think, though, top priority, non-negotiable for me would be the multi-use path. Get that where it's going to be,
yep.
so we can get people between places on that. And then matching what the school's done, I guess, would be my last choice.
Yep. Well, and Heyday showed, even when they came and just talked with us, and when they brought in concepts, I think they've showed the multi-use path on both frontages. They haven't,
Yeah, they have.
I don't anticipate any pushback from them at all about that.
Did they indicate what they plan to develop there? Did they have a plan of where it's going?
Low rise, how do they describe it?
Kind of like, was it like kind of smaller townhomes, sort of?
Yep,
A little
on
bit?
portion of it, and then, were they duplexes, or were they single-family rentals?
They
It
were
was a
kinda like
different product.
single-family rentals with like, you kind of park in the alleys to the
That,
back.
yep,
And the fronts of the homes are kind of all shared to courtyards. So it's kind of like you reverse the home a little bit so that all the fronts are kind of in like what appears to almost be backyards, but they all set themselves up as kind of like a large courtyard. And then in the alleyways off the road is where the garages, your space would be the park. They're pretty tight, but it was more of a, they described it as, this is the type of place where you go from renting to, like you wanted to buy, but you just weren't quite ready to buy, but you needed a little more space. So you kind of rented this kind of smaller kind of townhome kind of thing, sort of a community setting, and then went from there to purchasing a home.
But it wouldn't be like commercial or
There was
retail
only
or anything?
one commercial.
one parcel, commercial,
Yeah,
yep,
along Cottage Grove Road.
yep, kind of by the dental, yep,
Place there, right?
Yep.
Massage dental place that's there.
yep.
I think it'd be a perfect spot for a coffee shop, but we'll see if the business owner agrees.
They must have heard that from a lot of folks.
I think so.
They even referenced that.
They have
Not that there's a plan for it or anything, I don't want to start any rumors, I think they've heard that from a lot of people.
They did talk about
Is there space for trees in the boulevard there, or some kind of,
there would be, definitely would be that space for sure. Yeah, outside of when you come up to an intersection, you might require a left turn bay, but there's gonna be a lot of sections that are gonna be open and landscaping.
that urban heat island effect a little bit? Any other comments, questions? But
I think we did have it as discuss and consider, just because, like I said, I think we got way more into the weeds, but we were just looking for clear direction on the broadly, boulevard, 2 lanes is okay for now. Is really, really about it.
So you have a motion?
Yes.
I'd make a motion that we pursue a future cross-section would include the pedestrian path and 4-lane like we had said. And, in my opinion, well, let's look at that.
All right, so we have a motion, have a second?
Second.
And a
I'll second that.
Great, we have a second and we have a third, so any other comments? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. All right, so then we can move on to discuss the draft bike and pedestrian comprehensive plan, which was included in your packet. And I think.
Excuse me, Heidi?
Yep.
Could you have the microphone turned
Oh,
on in front of Andy?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
It's real hard to hear him.
All right, sorry about we'll try and be a little more diligent with our microphones.
Can you hear me now, Larry?
Yeah, good.
Okay. I'll turn it back on when I start talking.
All right, perfect. All right, so then JJ got the draft started for us, so I turn it over to you again.
I'll apologize for the roughest draft I've ever actually showed anybody, but given the timeline we're hoping to keep on this, and the fact that this is kind of a new thing for us, I wanted to just get at least some direction, or quite frankly, if everybody did have a chance to look at it and is okay with how it's going, I'm fine with that too, but I mean, literally highlight things like insert a pretty map. We've got a communications manager now who's assured me that he can help me out with all that part, so next month, you'll hopefully see something a lot more presentable. But, you know, broadly speaking, I tried to just capture a mission, vision, values, some goals, and then really well, we talked about the public outreach, what we did. Thank you, Heidi, for the survey template, and I was shocked at the response rate. And honestly, I think it's called out in here, and if not, I will in the final draft. That's something we'll continue to do on an ongoing basis, is just reach out to folks and what's keeping you from walking, what's keeping you from biking, what do you see, what do you want to see, and just keep that, you know, alive here in the village, no matter how great we get. And if we end up finishing every project that's identified in this first draft, we know we're gonna have more, so we'll keep that line of communication open. Yes, it'll be full of maps. Josh's GIS guru Dan was phenomenal in how fast I just said, can you give me a layer of bike lanes, bike paths, and sidewalks on both sides? And half a day later, he said, how's this look? Again, we can probably make it prettier, but as a tool to just be able to zoom into the GIS and see, all right, here's clearly some sidewalk gaps. And I'm thinking I'll call those out here later in the projects. We've talked about that at this committee previously. The big elephant in the room, and I touched on it before.
Do you want to share it at all? No, it doesn't matter.
Probably not, because it's a really rough draft. No, I can. If we want to talk about closing the sidewalk gaps, which comparatively we are in a way better place than any other community, mostly because we've grown so fast over the last 30 years where you did put sidewalks in. But the people having success putting in new sidewalks aren't assessing people, at least from what I'm hearing. They're not, you know, assessing property owners. They're considering it more like a road project that's absorbed by all your taxpayers. So again, I can hear differently. Obviously, I take direction from the committee and the board, and if we think that's a dumb idea, I'm fine pulling that out of there. It makes it easier to get a final draft. But I think that's something we should at least consider before adopting the final one, is that if we really want to close these sidewalk gaps, we don't want to have those battles, whatever year we identify that project, when we notify the homeowners along a 5-block stretch that you're going to get a bill for $10,000. You know, and here are your ways to pay for it. We do have options, and there are tools to help people do that, but it's a big obstacle. So just a piece for consideration. Let's see. If anybody did look through it and has anything in particular that they thought was ridiculous or just grammatically incorrect, I know it's going to be a lot of that here. But we've talked to, and that might have been more at the Sustainability Committee before we merged, but the bike-friendly status, looking for that. Honestly, I think we go for that as a community, but also, you know, in our facilities too. There's no reason we can't plan for bike-friendly business status. You can do that as a municipality. So what do we need to do at Municipal Services Building or here at Village Hall to encourage, biking or biking, walking, anything, getting to work without your car. Let's see.
I really like the start, JJ. I think it's exactly where we needed to go. And I don't know what was all entailed in what we talked about last month, but chapter 5 and onward talks about essentially things we need to improve and recommendations, everything. I don't know if that needs to be in this draft of the comprehensive plan, meaning let's take a status of where we are right now, get the tools available to us and what we want to be. And then once that's all in front of us, then we can sit down and say, hey, this needs to be done, this needs to be done, this is the order it needs to be done in, we can combine this with that, like we can do that. So I mean, maybe it'll make your life a little bit easier too.
Yes, absolutely.
Because essentially you're trying to make all the decisions right now. And I think that can be shouldered by the rest of us as well.
Well, obviously I'm biased, but I like the sound of that.
Well, the other thought I had is, as I was thinking about this, is this just staying in public works, or would we involve planning or, other groups, I think, would probably want to have some input on this. So I think it's something that, to your point, I think it's going to grow on its own over time. So let's just get what we need to get the wheels in motion.
Perfect. Yeah, no, and you're right. I guess I had envisioned if it went perfectly well and I had all the time in the world, it would have come back clean and beautiful with everything for this approval here, and then, yeah, probably plan and then board next. But if we can do that with just more of the broad kind of vision, and yeah, absolutely.
I mean, some of your project suggestions, recommendations in chapter 6, I'm like, yes, I like them, but you don't need to put it all on yourself, I guess.
Fantastic. No objection here.
It's, Parks is working on some improvements also in connectivity. So, that's kind of another one of those where it would overlap a little bit with other projects. Like there's going to be a path going through Community Park that could eventually be connected to Cottage Grove Road if we do that. So that's kind of where that would intersect with that group also.
I mean, it's going to take an artist to try and connect everything, but it's all about having the tools in front of us and seeing where it can go. Can you guys share that GIS map with the rest of us when it's ready, completed?
Yeah, I believe he put it public. I may be able to share
I
it.
think he might have. I can't remember how he set that up for you.
I can at least send the link he sent me. I thought it went public. I'm not sure where it is, if on the website or anything simple to find right now, but I can definitely share with this committee with the most recent email from him. All right, well, I love that. Well, I guess, was there anything else before we really got to, do you envision kind of chapter 5 on, you said, policy recommendations? Do we want to even work on that at this point, or not necessarily, really kind of mission, vision, and then needs for improvement, pointing out the gaps and the concerns?
Yeah, I mean, even, it's tough, like, even chapter 4 needs for improvement, like, I think, I mean, anything, a little thing you improve that you know of, that put it in there, but it is going to be a living document.
Yeah.
And other parks and other people are going to comment, and you're going to add stuff, so, it's not going to be I finished it, it's not going to be touched again, so, keep those, maybe keep those chapters in there even, but know that they're going to be buffed up or added to.
Perfect. Well, and Heidi, you're exactly right. That was one of the things, and I don't know if I called it out in the summary, but on that survey, that was one of the top things, was walking paths, not just connection. It was really connection to Bakken. People want to get across those railroad tracks. But just walking paths and park access too, so.
Well, JJ's the only one that knows about my bridge over the railroad tracks idea that will probably never happen, but pedestrian bridge over the railroad tracks, make it my official plug on the record.
I like that she's still got the probably will never happen. Obviously, I'm not convincing her.
Tunnels are cool too.
Tunnels are cool, but the way the
Oh, no,
topography works.
don't encourage her.
Tunnels are cheaper, usually.
The ordinances, going back, since that was kind of something you wanted a little bit of feedback on, the sidewalks. If you keep the chapter or not, is that something that maybe we want to recommend moving forward within this or separate from this? Any thoughts on the sidewalk ordinance changes?
Or that could be its own separate, I could pull it out of here, because it would be, it's either kind of a thumbs up or thumbs down, I suppose, so I probably shouldn't have spent the energy copying and pasting that in there, and even, it's really a matter of, do we want to keep this or not? Maybe that could just be, I believe I've got a memo from a year or two ago, I can just dust off and freshen up and bring back here for discussion as its own separate thing.
I mean, as part of Complete Streets, they kind of talk about reviewing your ordinances,
Yep.
just see what needs to be.
Well, and I think in here, I just made one of my, oh yeah, pull that out, but I could find the actual recommendations, they're not requirements, but the MPO came out with a pretty comprehensive list of things to do. And I believe that was one of them. I could pull out there, the work they've already done, no sense in reinventing the wheel. So that can be a future item.
Other comments or recommendations, changes? While JJ keeps working for final draft?
A lot more likely now to make it in time.
For the highlighted areas, things that you wanted to talk to us about, or were they just more where you'd like to
It was more
circle
just,
back
well,
to?
this wording's dumb. Anybody have any comments? But if nobody's,
And I think the mission, vision, and goals are really core of, what our plan is where we're gonna start from, and I think that those are some excellent places to start and build from, but. And I think that this committee and, a lot of other places that have had input have been doing a great job of already starting this unofficially without a plan, so I think, sort of putting this in writing, making it official, just with the Oak Street and something sustainability was interested in before, so bringing it kind of all together is good.
Are there other communities that have,
almost all have one of these, yeah. I mean, honestly, they range from, well, if this stayed under 30 pages, it'd be the shortest one I found. Madison's, I think, was almost 200 pages, and they took years to develop, which can be good, but can also be, we're doing the work. We don't need to overthink it.
well, less is more sometimes when it
Yep.
comes to these sorts of things, so I think we're going on the right path, but let's let this thing grow, so let's not have a finished product from the beginning.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Does having a document like this help for grant writing or funding or anything?
Anything we're going for, we've gotten them both, but if we're going for a park grant again with Dane County, maybe you share a copy of this. Yep.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have a document on the shelf that shows your thinking and planning, and there's some strategic ways in what you're doing, so that when the funds are available, people feel comfortable about giving you money because you have a plan, right? And it's not just going to something that, you kind of wish that you had, and you're not sure how it's gonna all link together, but when you have a plan, definitely it helps on the funding side. So, yeah, it's good to put something together.
Yeah, to your question about, sorry Heidi, I should have gone, the highlighting, the vision, I don't know what it was about that, and I think that one I might have maybe not stole from somebody, I just tried to make my own, and I didn't like the wording necessarily, but we've got another crack at all that too, when I bring it back, but it might not be bad. No, I think I've got all I need to bring something back here next month.
Any other feedback for JJ on this? All right, if you think of anything, you know how to reach him also, and I'm excited for the next phase of plan. All right, then unless there's anything else, we can move on to update on solar panels for the municipal services building.
Out for bid. Bid
Out for
opening
bid.
next Friday. That's really it, but we'll know more in a week.
Right.
Yep.
Any questions about it? I can show you plans if you really want to see plans. I mean, it's like one page.
What was the final raise size for the lot?
Oh, I should have knew you were gonna ask that. I don't remember. I'd have to talk to my electrical engineer.
Okay.
Um, Gosh, I wish I knew that off the top of my head.
And are we gonna combine the meters from like 3 to 1?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
It was a discussion point.
Yep.
Given that we just did a facility needs study last year, and there was kind of a recommendation from them. I'm waiting for a little more guidance from the village board as to what the future may look like, because there might be opportunities to get that done more efficiently if there's a bigger project on the building.
Right.
But nothing that we can't do at any point when reassessing, solar, whether we're doing a big project at that building or not.
Right.
I believe the gymnastics group is moving out of the,
Yes.
are we taking that over, or is it?
Yes.
We are,
We're-
okay.
Well, yes. We've already got 2 people in the one office over there. Yes, everybody's calling spots. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the system's set up too, so you can add to it. We can always add panels at a later date. If you expand that facility, right, and you're drawing a lot more, electrical through there that you want to expand it, you can. And then there's also some of the planning documents for that facility, if it was going to be upgraded or, combined with a village hall or something else, showed some pieces of the building getting carved out for kind of like a center courtyard for light. So we wanted to make sure we avoided some of those areas. So kind of thought through that a little bit and how it's placed.
No, yeah, I remember, the initial one that we recommended that Katie drew up was much smaller than what was actually put in for the budget. And
Yep.
so,
Yep.
we're happy with it, and like I said, we can always add to it. If we get
Right.
electric vehicles for the police, or
Yep.
police cars, and it's like, we know it's gonna be added to, so a starting point is everything,
Yep.
so.
How much of the village usage is offset by the panels approximately, just thumbnail?
It's
Actually, of that building itself, I think we recommended, oh gosh, it was only like 50% or something, but with the size
It's
of the
gonna-
budget, it's more like 80-90% of that building.
It gets closer to that 90%, and I forget, again, this is electrical engineer question, but a lot of times, like Alliant, the utilities don't want you to offset 100 or more because they'd
There's not
rather.
an incentive to do
There's
that.
not an incentive, so they like you to sit at the like 90% level.
Sure,
You know, just below that, so that
I understand
you're
what
still
you're saying.
drawing a little bit, so I think we're right at that level.
Yeah, so there, I mean, it's like it's a giant equation that Katie, who works in solar,
Yep.
figured this out, because in the summertime, you're making too
Right.
much electricity, right? And
Yeah.
Alliant buys it back from you, but they buy it back at very cheap prices, right? So
Right.
it's a balance of like,
Yep.
how much can we offset of our own uses, but then not just give them free electricity
They've
really
got
cheap?
huge demand because of air conditioners. which is-
Yeah, I know, but they did, of course,
Yeah.
they're gonna buy it back super cheap.
Yeah, I understand.
So like, the size that Katie recommended was probably the most efficient cost-wise.
Yeah.
But again, our goal is also is to actually cover all of our needs,
Right.
so.
Yep.
Yes.
And you're likely gonna use more and more, right, in that
Mhm.
facility to some degree as you continue to use it, so. Yeah, it should be a nice system up there, that's all.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we should get bids back July 22nd.
22nd.
Yep.
Yep.
Did we consider the Public Works building, the old?
Not yet. Kind of waiting again for maybe some direction, because basically the facility needs study, they've essentially recommended knocking that down.
Okay.
So we'll see once we get some clear guidance on that if we're knocking it down. And I don't know that we switched out the lights we do have in the shop there to LEDs. I don't know if there's enough usage there to make it worth.
Yeah.
Great, well, I look forward to hearing how the bid opening goes and get started on that. Any other questions on the solar panels for MSB? All right, great, then we can move on to new business, discuss and consider entering into contract with Purple Cow for compost and brush disposal. So there was a service agreement in our packet. So this is a change, I guess I can turn it over back to you guys, change from what's going on with our compost now.
Yep. Brian, you want to talk? All right.
I think everybody's familiar with how our process works here for brush pickup. We pick it up once a month. You know, if it's, I don't know if everybody's aware of Clark Street, where we kind of keep the overage of what we can kind of deal with. Obviously, we ran into having to remove that this year due to the project happening in Bakken. You know, trying to assess our program and how it's working, we ended up calling Purple Cow and getting a quote from them on how much it would cost for us to just transport it straight out there. And that's talking brush, leaves, grass, mulch, trees, if we have to, in our dump trucks without having to chip them if we don't, you know, especially with that storm that came through, you know, obviously would have been very helpful to have that process. We ended up utilizing it. They actually did help us out with that. They took care of us, so. But, you know, they gave us a quote of $5,100. I believe that's actually below currently what we pay, because part of it goes to Hamburg, correct, JJ? Yep. Part of it goes to landfill, and then part of it just goes for storage. That we end up having to tub grind. This current tub grinding was just under 30,000. I don't know how long of a, you know, that's been sitting. It could be quite some time. We do get contractors that dump there. We do get township members that utilize that. It's a process I'd like to get away from if we can, on the storage of it, and we can just go straight to the cow. It's done. I think it'll be a little more efficient too, obviously, with our dump site over on Bonnie. Right now, currently, we have to sort that. We have to get the brush out so we can just bring the leaves and the grass over to Hamburg, and then we chip the brush. Right now, everything gets loaded in the truck, everything together, and it goes straight to the cow. It's a little quicker. So, yeah, it's up for, you know, your consideration, and I think on efficiency and budget, we're hitting both of them, so.
So the village is gonna still send the trucks with the chipper out around the neighborhood still?
Yeah,
That
that-
stays the same?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to, you know, maintain that service as far as people being able to get wood chips. We need them for ourselves also.
Sure,
But on the larger piles,
yeah.
there's just, we don't really have to worry about them too much. We have the equipment right now to just load them in the truck and get them out of there and keep moving. You know, as we grow, I think we're gonna need that a little bit to kind of stay on track
Okay.
as far as how long brush pickup is taking, so.
So what about like the smaller items, like in the fall here, you got the leaves, and is that still gonna have a spot that people can go to and drop off?
Yeah, we're not eliminating the site on Bonnie at all. This will just help us get that cleaned up a little quicker and faster and keep moving on to other things. But yeah, we're not eliminating or changing the operations at all.
Okay.
This is just a way for us to kind of streamline where it's all going.
And where, is it in Middleton, or where does the staff have to then transport to?
It's right down the road, about a mile out on Meyer,
Perfect.
Purple Cow. So, you know, it also keeps our trucks off of 18 and, you know, 12 and 18, which with a full load of brush, I'd prefer our crew to stay off those highways if we can.
Did I remember right, did the county say no more to us?
That's,
Okay.
if you recall, county said no more to wood chips, 3.5 years ago, with a little bit of warning. And honestly, I remember, obviously Brian is a much more charming individual than I am. I found the old quote I had from Purple Cow. They offered us the DeForest Windsor site, and it was more costly than he got for a price here now, 3.5 years later. But Hamburg saved us and said they'd take our compost, or it was compost, sorry, that the county stopped taking.
Yeah.
And Hamburg stepped up and gave us a good price, just based on the fact that we didn't have all that much and their site could handle it. And when Brian got this from Purple Cow, I did call Mike Hackle and talk through it and said, you guys are great, just can you offer us, you know, can you also take wood chips and brush and, you know, whatever we pull, and their site can't handle that, so. And he did, we talked about it, and especially since he knew he wouldn't be here tonight, he did say, it's a better deal for the village, we hate to lose the compost, but it's a no-brainer.
Any other questions about the service or how that impacts any changes? Would this be immediate? We start this right away?
I'd like, so right now, we're still since the storm happened, they're allowing us to bring material there. I'd just like to continue that. The crew loves it. I mean, it's much more efficient. They're not pulling sticks out, having to make that extra stop for chipping to pick up the pile of brush that's there. You know, all around, it's a good deal. And I'd like to kind of make this, if we can, I'd like to make this just, we'll sign the contract as soon as we can.
I'd like to make a motion to enter into the contract with Purple Cow for the compost and brush disposal.
I'll second that.
And a second? Great. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. Great, thank you for working on that for us. Next, we have discuss potential changes to new construction requirements and recommendations. So this is something that Nick has been mulling over for a while and wanted to talk about kind of regarding sustainability, so I'll turn it over to him.
All right, yeah, so we talked about this a little bit in the Sustainability Committee, and I kind of want to just bring it up as a discussion point and to get the temperature of the room and how you guys feel about moving forward. We are expanding, as everyone knows, quite a bit, residential, commercial. And the idea is we have the chance now when we're building these brand new buildings to make sure that they're done how we want them to be in 20 years and not like how they want to be 20 years ago. And that really comes with sustainability and being efficient. So there are just some low-hanging fruit that I thought of that we could possibly ask the developers to do. I guess so I say ask tentatively because that is, I think, a big discussion point of do we highly recommend this or do we mandate it in something like that. But the idea of water saving and low flush toilets and water saving shower heads, very low hanging fruit. Electric vehicles are growing quite a bit. They require a 240 volt line run into the garage for their electric charger to work. To do that on a fully drywall garage is a lot of work for the commission and probably cause some damage to the garage and has to be redone, right? So it's a lot of cost. If you do that when there's no drywall and it's just studs, it's very easy to do. But there's the question of can the panel hold it? It requires its own block. So is everything shielded correctly? Is everything rated the right way? That's a huge extra demand, I think, on these houses that has not been realized yet, essentially electric vehicles. And then the idea of putting solar panels on your roof. How does that all equate? So I wanted to see it as essentially a discussion point. There are other things I think we could talk about and go on, even about insulation. I know code recommends a certain level. Do we recommend more in the ceiling because we're in the north? There's all this low-hanging fruit, and I'm not an expert in this, but it's something that I think we could try to, make the better house for the house of 2040 now, and I think residents would thank us in the future. But again, it's also asking developers to have an extra cost. I think a minimal cost during construction, but still an extra cost. So it was purely a discussion point. I think there is. I will say that I talked about this with John Williams when he was on the Sustainability Committee, and he was not for this. There is something about market pressures, and that eventually residents will want these, and that developers will hear that and eventually do it themselves. The question is, how many houses have we built? How many buildings have we built? And they're not installed, and now it's more work and more money to actually do it. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I'll just add, I did put the question out there to our legal team for, depending on discussion or really what we'd like to consider, what legally could we require if we wanted to? Because I'm sure there's got to be some kind of limitations. I'm sure there's some precedent or something already set. So waiting to hear back. But yeah, that's all I've got, I guess.
Nick, when you mentioned, water savings, the EV kind of setup for the garage with the 240, solar panels, insulation, all was like home building construction, the property owner or the builder of it. You mentioned like for the developers and everything else, are you thinking then this would somehow go into like development covenants that it would require those, each individual, if they were to buy a lot, to have to potentially do some of this or consider it? Because the developer really doesn't share the cost, it's really the builder. Once they sell the lot, it's onto the builder, right, of that? Is that what you're thinking, or?
Well,
I'm
yeah.
just kind of curious on what your thoughts are.
So now I'm going beyond my realm of how everything works. I haven't thought that deep
Yeah.
into it, I guess, and how legally it would work. I think asking someone to put an EV charger in their nicely finished garage when they don't have one,
Yeah.
just because they bought the house, I think that doesn't make sense. But again, it's about what's easiest, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's not easy on a finished home. It's easy when you're building one, right? So it's just different things. I sometimes wonder why they haven't done it already. But again, there's only 1% of the cars or less are EV vehicles. There's more things, of course, I can talk about and stuff. But like even all the apartment buildings going in, they probably all have large water heaters, and electric tankless water heaters are a really good alternative to save space, and they're very efficient. They don't have to travel very far either, and they can get hot water really fast. I doubt they have them in all the new apartments. So part of it is like bringing it to their attention. Hey, maybe this is just as good. Maybe it's a small increase in price, but it's also about knowing like the residents want this, So a lot of it can be done by like advocacy and just getting that information out there, but maybe it could go further. Don't know.
At the Sustainable Committee, I remember we talked about on more of like the infrastructure, public infrastructure side of it, a little bit about green streets, the thought of just stormwater and how we control it and how we treat it and stuff like that, that you can go above and beyond standards or require a little bit more from development potentially too. I mean, along those same lines, what should this group be discussing, right?
And actually, and on that, I think even the low-hanging fruit of this topic was could say we could mandate the village. Any village building or renovation that we do has to have these higher standards. And then again, that's kind of leading by example, and it does get the word out there to other developers and the citizens that hey, there's alternatives to some of these standard approaches. So I don't know what level this committee or the village board would want to do, if any, but I figured it's a discussion topic that I want to bring up.
I'm all for the continuance of educating and doing it. I kind of follow in line with John. I think the industry, and I'm seeing it now in some of the meetings I go to, where people they don't own the electric car today, but they're building the house. Just like you said, it's cheaper and easier to do it now, so they just go ahead and do it. If they don't, they sell the house with an EV charging,
Right.
So, but no, I kind of fall in line with what John's opinion was on this. I think eventually the industry is just going to swing over that way, but I still like the idea of the village encouraging it and providing education and advocate for it.
That's something I thought about in regards to this, reducing barriers for people. So I put an EV charger in my garage recently in my already finished house, and luckily it wasn't very far, and it was in the unfinished part of the basement. But then to give like a rebate for building permit or, just encouraging that, or if it's put in advance, I don't know if we can have some kind of rebate, or, you already have the inspector there at the location to verify that it's done, when you're building new construction, when they give occupancy or something. I don't know if there's some way that we can like incentivize this, even if it's small, or limited in scope.
When I was on utility commission 100 years ago, I don't know if it's still in place, but I thought at the time we put in, you build a house, you have to start a yard, you get a $25 water credit. I think that's still it. So maybe to your point, it's in addition to putting in your yard, maybe it's also towards putting in an EV charging unit or whatever, I'm not sure. I think it's, yeah.
Yeah, the water credit, I remember, yeah, getting that too. Yeah, something that we can control, and they aren't necessarily one-to-one, but even a water credit if you install the low flow things, or, I don't know.
I mean, again, I think it's a great alternative to like coming down on the developers and mandating it, because if you put the onus on the residents moving in, the home buyers, you get enough of them and they'll catch on faster than general market even. So we can still, like, by incentivizing it, we can still probably increase the likelihood of this happening years ahead of market pressures. But yeah, I mean, it's
Well, there's a benefit too, because you then maybe put down the road a few years a new water tower or a new water, some system that we wouldn't have to.
right.
So there's a benefit.
Yeah, in the big scheme, if everybody puts a water saving toilet and a shower head on, how much water are you saving and pumping, and then electricity, and the village doesn't have to pay for it. So in that sense, it does make sense for the village to incentivize it in some way.
Yep, and we've talked about those at Utility Commission. We never really pulled the trigger in recent years, but I do think maybe we bring it back here now with the sustainability component before budget discussions at utility. And it doesn't even take much. There's, again, we can copy and paste what other people are doing for incentives for low flow fixtures and things like that.
So that's kind of the single-family home side of things, but we have more control over when there's apartment approvals or commercial approvals. You know, what standards we require, or, but legally, I don't know that
I know,
that
that's
necessarily.
my only
but-
hesitation to say anything is legally we may not be able to. But I mean, they still have to come through the process. It could be a comment at plan and a comment at board, and we could always, if the legal team says you can't do this, incentives would be the way to go there too. I mean,
Every certain percentage of parking spots should have EV chargers, or I don't know. But yeah, to Nick's point, it's cheaper to put it in initially than once it's, you know, the parking lot's paved in.
no, I guess my thought was probably leave this on the agenda, get some clarification hopefully in the next month, and then bring that back from the legal team and see where the discussion goes from there.
Yeah, I guess just from our discussion, I feel like the two ways that might be going is well, possibly like a resolution saying this: any village-owned buildings, new construction or renovations will have these higher standards just for us, you know, and then somehow forming some kind of incentive program for shower heads. I mean, you can get them really, really cheap on what's it, Focus Marketplace, or I forget what it's called, but yeah, they're very, very cheap, along with LED light bulbs and stuff. So, but EV chargers and the installation of those is more. So maybe we can work on an incentive program.
I think for the village facilities, I mean, I know you had written it up already to some extent, Nick. That could be its own separate item for consideration at this committee and right to the next board meeting and just become, you know, policy, really. That one's not hard. We can hold ourselves to whatever standards we want. I think we should. I mean, we're looking to retrofit solar on a building that's got inefficiencies all over, but we're taking chunks at it, you know. If we're doing anything new, we absolutely are gonna want to. So that's an easy one, I think.
Other thoughts, comments, or we can just keep this on the agenda and continue discussion after we kind of mull over ideas? All right. Sounds great, thanks. Then we can move on to discuss and consider recommendation on County Highway N repaving options. Kind of touched on this previously, from what I recall.
I think we did. I don't remember how much. We definitely did at the pre-con. And Mike Hackle called me, and this was the first thing he asked today. No, he missed a meeting. What is this about? broadly speaking, their end is under construction.
I just pulled it up here too,
Okay.
JJ.
And I don't know if we have specific answers on costs or anything at this point, Josh. This is really,
We don't, but let's just talk through the details, and I think it's more of a decision of, do we want to explore this or not? Because I don't think the costs are really,
it's not going to be as
it's
significant.
not a
Yeah.
significant cost as part of the project. So from, let me zoom in, from School Road, we are urbanizing N, it's shouldered, all the way up to Limestone. We're putting in what will be a left turn bay to go into the new kind of development at Limestone, extending this median a little further to cut off the other limestone so people don't come out and do a U-turn all the time and come around here, because they can do that. But we're urbanizing all the way up to this side, taking off the shoulder, widening it a little bit, and then JJ does want to replace the pavement, the surface section, because it's cracked, as you can see, up to where this nicer concrete section is at Commerce, right? That's concrete, JJ, if I'm not recalling. So as part of that, we're building this under phases. If you've been up that way, you'll see that we're gonna start to shift traffic to one side, build one half, shift it to the other side. We've talked about that before here. They'll put down a binder surface, so the asphalt's gonna be layered, a lower layer, a binder layer, and then on top of that, a surface layer right at the end. They were gonna have, and how we bid it, was gonna be a final phase where they come in and they pave one side, and then they final pave the other side. But in the contract, they put an alternate bid, which would allow them to do a detour that we could, help them with, whether that was on North Windsor or on Landmark on either side, shut it down and basically surface pave it all at once. So instead of paving kind of half and then paving the other half, the final lift, it helps with a cold joint that kind of runs down the middle, and any type of stop and starting they're doing just because of traffic and in and out with trucks. Gets a little bit overall it provides a better product, but they'd have to set up a detour, and I forget if it was about $3,000, I think, for that, maybe, as part of the bid. We know that there's a lot of traffic though, right? So if they detour traffic for a couple days there, all that traffic that comes down in is gonna have to be put on one of these side roads. Which road is it? Do we really wanna do that for a couple days? Do we wanna take the heat, right, of probably a handful of calls that Brian and JJ are gonna get because this is detoured? Brian is pointing at himself. So we went back to them, and we're still waiting on a cost of, well, what if it's a nightly closure? So what if you can do this over a couple days and you shut it down at night? Let's say it's 8 p.m. till 5 a.m. the next morning or something, that you can have the road shut down. We can detour on one of these routes that we pick. We anticipate that being a little bit higher, but it shouldn't be out of the realm of, it should hopefully be under that $10,000 mark, but higher than the 3 or so that they gave us before. Again, it's a pretty large project, so I think that overall the cost really isn't gonna harm the project. It's more of, do we really wanna detour traffic knowing that it is gonna impact one of these side roads for 2 to 3 days while they pave it and stripe it. We thought we would come back to this committee and start the conversation here, because obviously JJ and Brian don't wanna make that call, considering that there will be some public, opinion about it. We can do what we're doing now, where you see the message boards up there, so we can put stuff on the website, we can put up the message boards, we can let the traveling public know that this will happen, but there's still gonna be the inconvenience of having to go around it, and the neighbors on either side are gonna experience it for those 2 to 3 days of traffic. Whether that be in the daytime or in the night, we haven't got that cost back for the night.
You say a better product, that means the road lasts longer, or?
It'll probably be less maintenance, there's a potential for less maintenance, crack filling and just the overall wear of it. If they can do it all in kind of a warm state, instead of doing it kind of a few days separate apart with a cold state, going up against a cold joint versus a warm joint, they're gonna have a better product. The asphalt guys will tell you it'll be a better product.
Okay.
So, that helps a little bit. I think it looks better in the end too. It'll be cleaner and everything will all be kind of done together, and the striping will kind of be done at one time together, so.
A recent example, Jim, is BB plus years, 3 years ago, we had to keep it open. And you could see that first crack that appeared was that cold joint right down the middle, which we just, we just gotta keep our eyes on and crack fill it. But that's the spot ultimately where you'll start to see cracking as the crack fill lets water in and,
Yeah. All right. You still, whenever they stop and start, and even if it's a warm joint, put it together. I mean, your potential for a crack is gonna be there.
Okay.
They're usually not as big and they don't come as fast, when you can do it more in a warm state than when you can do it in a cool state.
Okay.
How many,
So it's
how many
just a-
days do they need?
You know, that's what we're kind of waiting on them too. We gave them a detour in the contract for 5 days. So up to a week where they could detour. They probably only need a couple days to pave it, max. Ultimately, they do it all in one day, but then the striping will take a little bit longer, probably a couple days, depending on just also organizing the striping to come in.
So you gave them a right to detour it in the contract, but.
As an option to.
As an
not a
alternative,
right- yeah, a bid
as
option.
that alternative.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Saying that we didn't have to
So that's
accept
why
the
you know the
alternative.
cost.
Yep, that's why we know the cost. We didn't have to accept the alternative, but I just wanted to kind of get a feel
Yeah.
for what's it gonna cost us to see if we had to detour this. And just, we didn't really have any answers from this committee at that time. I just thought I'd throw it in there just to give us an option.
Josh, when you, and forgive me if you covered this, which I'm sure we did, but we're thinking if they say overnight and the cost is good, it's closed 8 to 5.
Yep.
They put the first course down, open it back up.
Yep,
Okay.
yep,
Close it down again.
yep. They would open
Final
it up in
course,
the morning.
close it down,
Yep, they'd open
close
it up
down
in the
again,
morning.
stripe it.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. It would just be nightly closures. You wouldn't have to deal with all the daytime traffic. You know, you could even debate a little bit to yourself, and we could talk to the contractors. They could just close it and put message boards and say road closed. At night, would you have to post a detour even? You know, from 8 to 5, is it pretty much everybody that lives around here? Or if they don't, they probably have Google up anyways, that they can just see the side street that they would go on. Do you need to really even post a detour, or are people gonna be like, okay, I'll just go to one of the side streets on either end and get around this? That would save the contractor some money at night, because they wouldn't have to actually post a route. They would just put up barricades, have advance warning that says, hey, the road's closed,
Yep.
flashing lights. People would slow down and realize, I can't go here, I gotta go straight.
Isn't it just a matter of putting up like 4 detour signs? to
Yeah.
get around?
It should be
So
pretty-
why is it costing so much more? But, yeah,
Part of it is just, yeah,
Yeah.
having to get their subcontractor to come out and move some signs, barrels around. Yeah,
Okay.
they won't do that,
Yeah.
so.
Naive question is, why do they need the road closed for striping? You can't do like half and half.
They could do half and half, but it's still only one lane in each direction, so they're going to have to shift
That's-
traffic all the way over to one side and then shift it back.
Is
That's
that-
what the initial plan was, right,
Yes.
for paving, was
Yeah,
that anyway.
they're gonna have to shift it, yeah.
So if that reduced the amount of time you had to do the detour to 1 or 2
Right.
days,
Yep.
This isn't really a local traffic road, it's a lot of people,
It is.
you know, you see it on the holidays when people come from the south to north, they cut through Cottage Grove. So, I'm not really thrilled of having all that outsider traffic clipping down these side streets where you got little
Yep.
kids out there playing in front of their house. I don't think you're not gonna get a lot of friends on those side streets. My opinion is just leave it open, restrict the flow, it's gonna be a pain in the butt, but I just think it'd be a better, he wouldn't have as many phone calls coming his way, and I think you'd limit a lot of exposure to some sort of a accident on these side streets, just my opinion.
well, if they did the night paving, well, what's the hours? 10? Like, how late can they start?
Yeah, we haven't discussed that with them, but sometimes when you restrict it, they would say, well, the more time you can give us, the better, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's gonna be longer, you know, it's gonna take us a little bit longer. Or what's the benefit if I have to go multiple nights short? I'll probably have a bunch of joints in there anyways, because it's gonna cool before the next time. So we haven't got official word from them that they'd even consider night paving yet. And what that would cost, there's probably some sort of a cost to it, because again, their crews would have to work at night, you know.
Who's got this project? I don't even know.
Cattell has it, but they aren't paving it. Cattell's doing all of the concrete work. I want to say it's Tri-County?
I was just trying to remember, I was gonna go back to
Yeah, I think
the-
it's Tri-County paving. Pretty sure it's the one.
I would ask them at minimum to do the striping, half and half, so that if you did the detour, it's minimum or maximum 2 days, right? If they could do the night, I think that would be better, because again, there's less kids out, there's less people out. And then if you had to do it during the day, I mean, I think you essentially have to go around to each one of those houses and have a pamphlet in their mailbox saying, hey, these
This is
2
what's
days,
gonna happen.
take care, because it's personalized messages essentially. Otherwise, you will have problems. But it is hard it's hard when the better product is there and you have less work in the long run. Like, it's just, you want to do it right, but it's tough. I don't know.
You know, JJ, I mean, I'm thinking about it more and more, and, you know, do you feel good about just the way you guys are crack filling and your
Yep.
ability to get around and,
Yep.
you know, get what you need to get done, and you're already gonna, it's not like this is a real long stretch either, it's not like we're doing N from, you know, the top all the way down to Cottage Grove Road, where it's like, it's kind of a short stretch, so if you're already north and south doing some stuff on it, you just watch the center line and you
Yep.
just make sure you stay in crack filling, and maybe it's really not that big of a deal.
And honestly, to me, and I know Brian's only had a handful of weeks, but we're pretty good on crack filling. And this takes such a beating along this corridor anyway. I'd hate for us to go to this, me and Brian both get fired or just pitchforked out of the office. And then,
You're still gonna
you
get some
know,
cracks.
with the tractors and the trucks and everything, then we see wheel rutting anyway in 7 or 8 years.
Right.
Versus the one seam we took care of that doesn't exist, but we've still got just what we see on end.
Yep.
And Nick's absolutely right, and I'm familiar with enough folks on Landmark alone that I'm not going door to door to tell them what's coming. At least the folks on Windsor would mostly be new residents, so I guess I might as well go make them mad. And then, there's not a good option here. That's why, you know, when we first discussed it, as much as I'd love to see every road closed when we pave, I said immediately, this is going above my head before,
We have oh, sorry, I just want to make sure we get comment on Zoom. I don't want to skip over.
Let me just stop sharing there.
Something you wanted to add? I just want to make sure we,
Larry, do you have anything?
No, not really.
okay. I thought maybe I heard you trying to chime in, so I wanted to make sure we got to you.
Well, they kept losing some of the audio, but you jumped back in and out.
Okay. We'll try to keep up with our mics.
It kind of sounds like you guys made the decision then of just not closing it, which I think is a safe decision.
Yeah, it's just, we wanted to bring it back because it was still hanging out there a little bit. We feel like we should bring it back to you guys just to discuss it once.
Yeah.
See if we're kind of feeling the same way we were, like, we kind of talked ourselves into kind of deciding, right? JJ, a little bit?
I guess, given that there was at least the same, I heard the same hesitancy here that I was feeling, so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the savings are that significant here in this case, in my thoughts, so.
How much of the stretch is even where it's joined in the directions across? Because the boulevard median situation, it's extending farther, is that what you're
It's
saying?
going all the way up to Gaston and then all the way down to School Road. So from like Limestone up to Gaston is a boulevard section, so it'll be, you know, that would be separate.
You showed a turn lane going into Landmark Lane, or Drive, or whatever it's called. The car mechanic,
Yeah,
what would happen there?
so that would stay as is. Yeah, it would stay open.
Oh,
It would
okay.
stay open. Yep, it's open today and it'd stay open, full access to that town parcel there.
Okay.
So Graham's in the house, and then to school, that'll be the part where the seams will join.
Yes, otherwise, you're right, as you go north, we can pave that whole side altogether because traffic will be on the other side. Yep, it's a good point, Heidi.
And the
No action
bike.
taken, sounds good.
Slightly off topic from that, but at one point there was a talk about a multi-use path going like, where it is now all the way to the county park. Is that going in?
we're doing our part. It's not gonna make it all the way to the county park, because it's outside our
Right,
jurisdiction.
that's
but
going into
yes,
this construction right
yep,
now?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
This is, honestly, this was the project that was supposed to all be one. This is phase 2 of the bike path, which has
Right.
grown into an urbanization, turn lane,
Right,
crosswalk.
okay.
Yeah, we're just finishing it.
Yep, just a bike path project we're finishing up.
Awesome, awesome, okay.
So with this, you want a motion that we're taking to the recommendation to the village board? Are they gonna,
I think,
or we're good with our discussion?
do you anticipate, Heidi, would the board look at this and say, what are you guys talking about? And we could say we took no action, because, or do we want to just say the recommendation? I guess we could have a motion to pave it during the day with lanes open, or something like that, and then we can just,
All right, I'll just go ahead. I'll make a motion that we pave this county end project with lanes open during the day and not have a complete shutdown.
I could second that.
In a second? Great. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. Great, then we can move on to Josh's report. Got a two-pager, lots of stuff going on.
Engineers report?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, there's a bunch going on. As you can see in the report, there's several developments. Shady Grove has installed all their sidewalk, curb and gutter. They're fine grading for the roadway now, out there on their kind of second part of that. We're working with them to address a little bit of site runoff that's heading to the south and to the west as part of that, and some concerns for it, but we should be able to take care of that. And then they have a little bit of water infiltration issue at the pump station still that we're working on. So currently, there's 2 model homes built out there on the development, and they do drain to that lift station where we're seeing a little bit of leaking going on. But it's going pretty smooth otherwise, and I think they're right on track to kind of do some paving here shortly on that development. Authentic's right across the road. You can see everything over there going on. All the public improvements are done except for the park side of it. So there'll be like an asphalt parking lot over here on that kind of far eastern corner that then leads to the back where the detention basins are, and there'll be dog parks. Otherwise, the rest of the stuff out on the street is pretty much being taken care of. Power is down, right, JJ, except for some of the telecommunications that are still out there. But yeah, they're moving right along, and they'll continue to build buildings on that site as they go.
When will the sidewalk below the school be cleaned up and?
Yeah, that's a good question. So they're waiting on that as you can see they're continuing to kind of dig out that hill, move some of their black dirt out, and move some of their excess material out. And I don't know if they've kind of contracted with several others to kind of buy some of that or take some of that in places, but they continue to haul out of there. So once I think they get all to grade on that back lot and build some of their back wall that I think that's gonna be along there and some of their other facilities, they'll address that. We constantly have to remind them, and you probably have noticed that they get rock out on the road out there, and they get, sediment out on the road, and it's a weekly email to them about it. And actually the foreman that's on site, their sub that does all the site work, a week ago kind of said to their sub, hey, I get the same email from Strand in the village every week, and I send it to you. Let's do a better job. And I hope, they're getting frustrated with some of their subs on it also, for keeping it clean. And I don't know if anybody's noticing that, but we are.
Well, I was just wondering, couldn't they just put a binder course down or some kind of just temporary in that area? So the sidewalk is one smooth surface, but also that doesn't spill into the road?
And maybe move their tracking pad back further, is what you're
Yeah.
saying? Because they need their tracking pad, which is
Right.
that larger stone. And what it's there for is so it cleans the tires off, right, as they're leaving, so they don't get sediment out into the public's, realm. So,
I mean, I only say that if they think they'll be through the summer pulling
Yeah.
material out. If
That's
it's like, we'll be done in a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
well, all right,
yeah,
but,
I'll ask them that. That's a good thought, is could they put some temporary pavement in there? It kind of helps the sidewalk kind of still function, right?
yeah.
And it pulls all that rock back to some degree, and it would save them from having to sweep pretty much daily.
All right, yeah.
And they know this, we would remind them that school starts in 6 weeks, and I think like, that's a nice deadline to have.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I would agree. I would hope they would be done by then.
Right.
But I'll ask them on timing.
Do you know when they're going to, like, put in the grass for the dog park? Is that next year?
I don't know that.
No.
I don't know that. It could be following into the next year, depending, or late fall this year. Yeah.
That's gonna, if I understand correctly, that's gonna butt next to the school forest, right?
That will up on the backside there.
All
Yep.
right.
Yep.
Wonder if they're connected at all. Interesting.
Just on Parks is planning for it to open in '23, so I think they wanted to get grass in, so then it's established for when it opens.
Yeah, they wanna
Yeah.
have dogs all done.
Right.
Yeah, I would think they'd wait till probably the fall season, you know,
Sure.
when it's, the temperatures start to
2023.
drop down a little bit, and then,
Yeah.
so that they can then do it in '23, right?
Yeah, that's the last I heard from Parks Committee
Yeah.
on their timing, if they're still on schedule with that timeline.
Yeah, I wonder if it could be connected to the school forest, so that'd be cool.
Yeah, I'm wondering as part of that dog park, so it's fenced all the way around it, you know, so they probably would just need,
Yeah.
they probably would need an access gate
Another
to get
access
out
gate.
on that side, and then,
Yeah,
yeah.
the sunset.
Yeah.
Most of them have a double gate
They
at
do.
the
Yeah.
exits in it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if they have one over on that side, but if they
Sure.
don't, they could always, you could always install one too in the future to kind of make that connection to some degree. I don't think I don't believe they show that now though, as part of their.
No, I wouldn't have thought they'd need to get the school involved in the whole thing there.
So moving on to West Lawn Estates, all that sidewalk was installed last month. We anticipate binder will be put down for that phase here coming shortly. Quarry Ridge is onto their next phase. Snyder Excavation continue to do utilities. They pretty much have all of it in except they need storm sewer still that they have to put in, and then they are gonna do grading. They've kind of pulled off of that site. I think they have other things that they're working on, and it's kind of like their filler work when they don't have something else. They're not in a rush out there to get it done, you know, tomorrow. They do want to get it done this construction season, but they're off doing other things right now. You know, I talk on here about other development in Haiti, and we talked about that, and they're gonna be submitting a formal kind of development plan here in July for their development that's out there by the school in Shady Grove. We continue with all those erosion control checks, and then public works projects that are going on. First one, 22 streets, so that's Oak Street and Taylor Street. Oak Street, you can see is dug pretty much all out. Base course was put back in, the path there is graded, fine graded, so you can see that we use recycled material for the path. We're trying to somewhat be on both of these projects green in the sense of, and we've worked with Hamburg a little bit on this, like if you can pulverize, you can use that pulverized material as base course for the path. One, that does two things. It saves the money for us having to haul in base course, and two, we can recycle right there on site for some of that, and that has been the plan as part of that. So the path will go in along with the curb along that one side, so that would be the south side of the road, because we're narrowing that stretch. Then they'll come in and they'll fine grade, and they'll follow up with pavement on top of that. Everything's going there as planned. They have a little bit of storm sewer that we're adding as part of that to shore up some storm at one of the intersections. So you might see a couple holes that are dug out there, and they're just waiting on some inlets that have to go in. As far as Taylor Street, all of the water main was put in, and we're working on, they tested it, and we're working on connecting the laterals as part of that to the homes. Brian, we had a great day, was it yesterday, right, where they clipped the water service and.
Yeah, you know, it's a tough area to work in. Holmberg's doing a great job.
They are.
It's just, you know, it's almost easier if you went into it thinking, where's the last place somebody would run a lateral? That's probably where you should start. They're not placed very well, and we don't have any plans on it.
We don't have records on where they're located, so they're digging blind a little bit. It's old transite pipe, which is a little softer, right? So if they just snag a copper lateral a little bit, a lot of times what will happen is you'd pull that one houses out and you could shut it off, but with the transite and how they're tapped in, sometimes you rip it completely out of the main, which is what happened there, and you gotta shut a portion of the main down, which cuts a few of the residents off.
Yeah, Tyler
as part
was,
of it.
Tyler did a great job from Strand, you know, obviously he contacted me right away. I took care of, you know, letting, police officers know that that road we did actually have to shut that down for the repair, it was an emergency. But Tyler handled that aspect of it, I took care of the rest of it, and, no, we're back in action, I think 7:30, 8 o'clock last night, I mean, obviously those things take longer than anybody wants them to, but, you know, those guys did a good job out there.
Yeah, I see it on a variety of projects in a variety of different places. It's pretty normal, and it was handled good. So they're just about done with the water main. You'll see that they've pulverized that entire stretch through there. We were gonna replace some of the stone for the street up in the far western section where we were digging the water main in, but we found that there's a great amount of stone already in there. We didn't know what we were gonna run into, and then further in the middle section of that, there's not much stone at all. It's almost like the further you go east, the more they built on what would have been an old town road, and they didn't really put much back besides putting asphalt back on top. So we're having to kind of dig a section of that out, which is okay, because we're supplementing material that we thought we were gonna use up by the water main for down there. And, you know, it'll probably be a wash at the end of the day, and again, we're trying to use recycled material because we pulverized some of that road for some of it too. So, right now the construction is going good. They're chugging along, on both of their projects there.
You said we didn't know where the laterals were. Are we updating our plans so we know?
Yeah, we're getting records and we're, you know, noting and we'll update, you know, the GIS too after all these projects. So it'll be on paper and it'll be electronically where that stuff is, and you'll be able to locate it better also in the field than you could.
So is each house gonna have to have a new lateral cut to their house from the main?
No.
There was one house that was up on the, I don't know, I know the lady's name, but over the weekend, I think, or last week, they were cutting a new, it looked like a,
Yeah. Past their driveway there or whatever. So there was a section where there was an old 6-inch stubbed in to the south. And there's some bigger lots there. And I think at one time, the thought was when they put that water main in, you know, what if one of these houses sell and there's property behind it and it would all develop someday? And we'd need a 6-inch lead into that because it could be 4 or 5 homes or a multifamily kind of unit that would go in there. And what happened is that 6-inch was stubbed off of the main and the street, and then their 2 laterals were stubbed off the 6-inch. So in order to abandon kind of this side of it, we had to go in and grab their lateral that was further in their yard and connect it to the main that's running out along the street and abandon. I think that might be what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think-
There's 2 homes along that.
yeah, with the big shed in the backyard.
Yeah.
So then, how much longer with the lateral, with the water main work? How much more time, when are they gonna be done with the water?
Oh, the water main overall, I would think if they don't get it this week, should be early next week.
So then when do they think they'll be paving?
Are you thinking about,
Well, here's the problem.
Answer there?
Yesterday was a big mess. Everybody in my neighborhood was screaming about it.
Yeah,
I
about the
biked
waters.
up after, you know, I trust they did a great job, I'm
Yep.
sure of it. They didn't plan to have that
No,
happen. They didn't
no,
want to have
They
that
don't want it to
happen.
happen because at that point
Of
it's
course
on
not.
them, right?
It's costing
You know,
them money.
It's costing them money, right?
But I was just biking up there to say, how's it going, how's it looking, and everybody's already gone, and one of the ladies that lived in the neighborhood came out, and she's like, I still don't even have water in my house, and they were gone, everybody was gone. So I guess the thing that I have, we're hearing that, and then another lady drove by, and she's like, my water was off,
Yep.
and so, communication, I think, was the thing I heard from the people that came out,
Yep.
and were, you know, neighbors come out and start talking.
Yep.
Nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew that it was all done and wrapped up. That was number one. And then I don't think, when you see something breaks, obviously, like I said, Homburg didn't intend for that to happen. So it wasn't something they could communicate, hey, we're going to break this lateral tomorrow and it's going to cause a big mess.
Yep.
But if there is something that's going to cause, again, like I said last month, if we can communicate it out to the people, maybe there won't be any more
Yep.
planned big shutdowns. I don't know if there will be. And if there's not, then let's hurry up and get it done with, I guess, is the thing. 'Cause,
Get out of there.
the section between Yarrow and Heather, I kind of figured there must be just some bad material there that, or no material.
No
that they're-
material, yeah.
They're scraping it out. That didn't seem like something that would be a long term. It looks like they're almost done, actually.
Yeah, there's sections of, they're already finishing up.
Yeah.
They're digging out and
Yeah.
finishing up.
So I guess communicate back to the people along Taylor, you know, for sure those folks, because they're taking the brunt of it, what the timing is and what the next big thing is. That's everything I heard from the people that came out and were talking last night.
So I think what we need to do, and what we try to do bi-weekly, is get an updated schedule from the contractor, and then try to get that posted onto the website too, so that
Okay.
there's some idea and some, timeframe maybe of when certain things are gonna happen. So at least the public can see that,
Yeah.
and direct them there, as part of it.
Do you have it off the top of your head, though, what do they anticipate having this go through the summer?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a decent amount of work to do. I mean, it's still gonna take, I'm trying to think of their schedule off the top of my head. I think they were supposed to be done by September. Mid-September was their substantial completion date,
Mike
if I
seemed
recall.
ambitious this afternoon.
Yep.
Not an official report though, so I'm not gonna share it, but it could be ahead of schedule.
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't be surprised if, near the end of August, most of that asphalt's down. So what's gonna hold them up on the asphalt is they're gonna try to get Oak, Taylor.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Wheeled
sure they're gonna
Bridge,
do it all.
Wheeled Bridge is gonna get milled on the other side of there. It's gonna get milled and repaved as part, pulverized and repaved as part of it too. And they're gonna line up the asphalt guys to come in and knock a lot of this out at all at once. So they're gonna get it to where it's drivable in that final grade, and it's probably gonna function as more of a kind of a gravel roadway. And then they're gonna get the pavement guys in and probably do more of it all at once, as much as they can at once.
Yeah.
Within a couple week time frame.
The only other thing this person mentioned that really caught my attention, her husband was sitting out in the front yard just kind of watching activity, and he said there was a vehicle that the road was closed, got frustrated, drove up on a sidewalk all the whole length of the project,
God.
which is idiotic to say the
You're seeing
least.
last night. that you-
No, I think this had happened, and maybe the Hamburg folks had seen it.
Hmm.
Police presence, I think, would help. I know they put
They put
the
the
car
car-
out there,
put
but
the
I
car
think
For speeding.
if
It's
every,
looking too dusty now to be a threat.
yeah, you're right, yeah. Well, that was the other thing too. I noticed over the weekend, there was no dust, we haven't had much rain here
Right.
in the last few
Yeah.
days, so if they could have that dust control.
How have you felt it is during the week? Are they better at the dust control during the week or no?
I honestly don't.
It's not horrible. I actually walked through there while they were working on it, they
Yeah.
were finishing up working on it.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad.
Okay. Yeah, I can talk
I
to
mean,
you about dust control a
It's
little
okay,
bit more
it's
too.
okay.
Yeah, well,
Although I don't live there, I live on Taylor, so.
the weekend, all the equipment's off to the side, people can drive on it.
Yes,
And
yep.
then
It's
you have
hard
more
on the
traffic and
weekends.
driving faster than they should
Yep.
be. So if they could
Yeah.
pop a truck out there maybe in the afternoon on a weekend or something, I don't know. what the
Chief
right-
mentioned it today, they're aware of, that's the first I had heard of actual speeding concerns. But Chief obviously heard about it because he had mentioned they were gonna get the speed board out there and they usually follow that up, or pre or post speed board, they've also got patrols going. So they're aware.
I'm sure there's people driving through there way faster than they should. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Which boggles my mind because these people are working so close to the traffic lane. Why would you want to put somebody at risk? But there's not.
15 miles an hour, I can't imagine driving any faster.
No.
But-
Yeah, I mean, Hamburg was even requesting that they get something out there to help try to control.
Hamburg too?
Yeah, to control the speed that some people are going
They
through.
get that call from Ty Monday.
Yeah,
And that's when the chief helped me get the squad out there. I think it was, let's try this, see if it works.
Mhm.
If we have to, raise our level of enforcement, let's do that.
Yeah, because the whole idea I had over here with the asphalt by Authentics,
Yep.
when they got the water main tied to the main street, they paved that, which was great.
yep.
Now, I know, like tonight when I was coming up here, they must have opened up a section in front of they pulled the curb and gutter out on the northeast corner. And I don't, my tires were pulling up gravel, so I don't know, as soon as they can get that temp down, I think that would be helpful by the intersection, but.
Yeah, as far as you're coming out and pulling gravel out onto the road,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
when
yeah.
you're turning out onto it from Taylor there. is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure, I'm just one person, I'd probably give you a laundry list of things, but it's getting a lot of attention, especially yesterday really did. Because it happens at the most convenient time of probably
Yeah, it couldn't
5:30 at night.
It couldn't
you know.
have happened at a worse time,
Right.
That it was out, a lot of times, you'll see it, and, they're doing it all day, so if it happens at 9, and most people are off at work, now even people are working more at home, but, it's not as inconvenient, but when it's during dinner, and
Right.
people want to come home or shower or whatever, if they were out working outside, or, and all of a sudden you have no water, I can understand how everybody's like, wow. You mentioned something he didn't have water after everybody left. Do you think there's still somebody out there that doesn't have water?
I would hope not. I mean, this
Okay.
is,
Gotta be, what we see all the time back when I was with City of Madison is it's, somebody went to their, they've got an aerator. they
Yep,
got a little something
yep.
in there. And then I'm guessing somebody in their life called them up and said, don't screw that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just sediment, whichever faucet they went to first.
oh, could be. Yeah, you gotta run the air through to get the
Yeah.
pressure up. And
That's
she
what
even
I'm thinking
admitted
too.
maybe that might be what is happening, but.
I was gonna say, I didn't receive one phone call
Okay.
today. That's that, so
Well, then I would
I'm
think you would have
hoping.
gotten one by now
Right,
if you
for
had.
sure.
Yeah.
So, she might have, yeah, that might have been the
Of course,
case.
every once in a while in Madison, we'd get somebody that would wait a week and then call them, my water hasn't been on, you know, you find out somebody did turn their
Right.
curb stop and they just waited a week thinking it'd heal itself. So, you never know.
All right, that's all.
So I don't have a time frame for you, but I would say you're still a month out from probably starting to see,
Mhm.
a good road to be driven down and then asphalt right behind it.
Yeah, I would think the curb and gutter would be poured would be a good indicator, and then getting it to at least close to
Yep,
finished
they'll
grade.
get close to finished grade, and
Yeah.
then you'll have an idea that it's getting close then at that point, yep.
Okay.
Then it's just a matter of scheduling and getting the asphalt guys in to do it, and they're busier than you can believe, so it's just a
Yeah.
matter of lining up their schedules with them. Yeah.
Okay.
Clark and Grove, I think was the only one we did not talk, well, yeah, Clark and Grove, we talked about N already, as part of, it just started. So you're seeing some temporary, they're doing some, on N, they're doing some digging on the one side to put down temporary pavement so they can shift everybody over to the, what would be the west side of the roadway and build the east side first. And then Clark and Grove, they are digging out ponds over there first, and they're gonna start, doing storm sewer and the little bit of water main that they have left over there, and from there, they're going to do street work. Right now, there's a detour, that's posted just adjacent to it that goes by the Public Works building. There, the traffic isn't like everywhere else. I feel like that's a pretty easy one to get around. Taylor's the tough one because a lot of people, that's the only way kind of in over there, right?
Well, and,
It's not inconvenient.
up off is closed.
Right, yes, because of,
Great coordination.
yep,
The
right.
roofing is just
So,
bad.
we're seeing a lot of stuff on that side, but, yeah. Other than that, I have in my report just a couple park projects that have been, have both been bid and we're awarding contracts, and then the solar array that's on there. And then, I also talk a little bit about the detention basin. We were going back and forth on the detention basin. And, the more we investigated Cooley Highland Detention Basin, it just didn't make as much sense because we realized that it's getting a bunch of town water too, so you couldn't take as much credit for it as we were hoping. And at the time, we just thought, let's just put the brakes on. Let's focus on the other one, which was North Lawn, which is gonna involve some public involvement, more of a year of planning, set us up for grants, and we'll just kind of start that, later this year and into next year as part of the idea. So we didn't want to spend money on and go for funds on a project that potentially didn't give you the phosphorus removal or benefit that maybe some other options could. And let's get grant money for that instead of this one so that we set ourselves up better in the village. That's all I have, JJ. Unless anybody has any questions.
Thanks, Josh. Any questions about the engineer's report? All right, thank you. And then we can move on to Brian's report.
Thank you. Your message boards are ordered. We're looking at about 3 to 4 weeks lead time. Hopefully they won't be here for market days, but hopefully we can utilize them for the project if need be on end. So just took a little bit longer than I wanted to, but it's done. So I have had a few meetings with Katera. It's a company that specializes in emergency locate notification. Currently, right now, we get them through fax machine at our office. We have one individual through our crew that's a big part of his job is doing all those locates. The problem is, every time he needs a new one, he's got to drive back to the office and get that. So we're trying to make that a little more efficient. It is going to cost, obviously, everything costs money to do that, but I'm hoping that, it makes the process obviously much more efficient, but it's kind of a training tool too. I think it'll help us get up to speed on where a lot of other communities are too, as far as our ability to get more and more done every day. It's a little overwhelming when he comes in and has 30 locates because he was off the day before, but with this process, this company will do is it actually gives him the information before that. So let's say he's an hour before he's coming into work, it actually organizes it for you by location. It sets it up where you don't have to spend 20, 30 minutes kind of, nope, that's number 5, that's 6, organizing them by paper. So, but we'll have to see what that quote comes at for price. And it's something I've utilized before in other communities. It's worked very well. But again, we'll have to see what the cost is and then move forward from there. So, the last item I have is, due to that storm that came through, and we had some issues with well 4, and we had an outage out in the industrial park. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's noticed, but because there's so much lighting given off from the industrial buildings out there, about half of our lighting is out in the streets. It's really not even, that's the only reason we noticed is we had an issue at well 4. We went out there and I'm like, are you serious? I'm driving around, I'm going, like, half our lights out. So we have 2 ways we're gonna kind of approach this. Is one, we've already got a quote from Nichols to actually switch over to LED. It makes sense at this point to me anyway. I mean, we're about half out, so we might as well. But the problem is they don't make the light fixtures anymore. We obviously we're down one already that got ran over by a semi, I think about a year ago. We just can't replace the stands or the fixtures anymore. They don't make them. So I did reach out to Alliant on having them give us a quote on what it would cost to phase in their poles out there versus having our electricity out there, our fixtures. That way, one, we're not having to locate them anymore. But 2, when they're damaged, it's a phone call and they replace them. They're guaranteed for life. So there is a buy-in. It's roughly about $3,000 to $5,000 a pole. Obviously, that number does flux a little bit depending on the distance you have to run. But I think in the long run, it's probably, in that area anyway, it's probably a good idea. Maybe at least entertain it. But I haven't gotten all the numbers yet, and I'm hoping by the end of this week I will, and we can kind of balance that and see which one is more Cottage Grove. So just letting you know where that's at. So.
Do we have this deal with Alliant anywhere else in the village?
What's that?
Do we have this deal with Alliant, their poles anywhere else in the village?
Alliant probably takes care of about 95% of our electric in town.
Right.
There's only a few areas. This is one of the biggest islands that we have, but there's a few islands through the village that are owned by us that we have to, when we do get a locate request in, we have to, when we do get a request that comes in, we have to locate that electric then. So a few of them are up at the big intersection of N and BB, but this is probably our biggest island that's out there. Ideally, it's not generally an industrial park that you have decorative lighting, but to each their own on that one. I just wanted to present the committee and the board with just options of how we want to approach this.
Yeah, along like in front of the 1855 in the Old Town area, I believe we own that.
Yep.
At the 4-way intersection we own, and then out by the, I didn't know that we had them within the business park themselves.
The entire business park is all ours.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand why, think back why we might have done that, I can't.
So, and we own the portion, from school to Gaston, the medium there. That's all ours. Anywhere you look
Yeah.
that's not concrete and it's decorative, we own. So it's that whole area out there that is ours. So.
So is that a bigger decision of we want to get away from owning our own in the long term, or?
I think it's when you look at it, like, the idea of having decorative lighting is great, but they get discontinued so quickly that it's just, that doesn't really work, for, if you go with Alliant, I mean, where they're just guaranteed that they're concrete, they're never really gonna change, they're always been the same. But that's part of the problem.
It's kind of like that when Henry Ford came up with cars, you can have any color you want as long as it's black, and that's kind of what you get with the, streetlights.
Correct.
And in these parks, these areas I'm talking about, we wanted to kind of enhance the aesthetics of it and make it a little bit more attractive, so that's why we.
Yep.
But within the body of the business park itself, that would
Right.
be an area where I don't think we really need to worry too much about aesthetics.
Right, and that was kind of my theory. I didn't want to, I just wanted to be able to present a couple options to the board, so. That's it, unless anybody's got any other questions.
Any more questions on Deputy Director's report? All right, then we'll move on to item 8, approve the minutes of the June 7th, 2022 Public Works and Properties Committee meeting. Any edits, comments, or a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. Last meeting.
Motion and a second? I'll second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 I,
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries. Then we have set tentative date for the next meeting. We are 1 week later than usual in July with the holiday. So our regular scheduled meeting is in 3 weeks on August 2nd. We could stick with that unless anyone has any other thoughts on that.
Pretty sure, yeah, I won't be able to make next August 2nd, but, I mean, go ahead and have it if you think you'll have a quorum, that's.
We'll plan on August 2nd. If we hear differently about quorum, sure we can reach out. All right, so future agenda items, sounds like we'll have update on all of our projects, bike and pedestrian path, but more discussion on construction requirements, incentives. Any other items for next agenda? Hearing none, all we have left is item 11.
motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion and second, non-debatable. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I.
Thanks so much for the discussion and your time tonight. No.
No, okay. Just wondering if I were-